Okay, so what have the NPCs written lately? Oh, it's about Lord of the Rings and Orcs. And what specifically? Because I've only seen the actual title being marked on various social media because it's absolutely ridiculous. But let's actually go through it. It's my first time reading the actual article, so I wanted to go into depth in why it is actually saying. So the headline is Lord of the Rings prejudiced against orcs. This isn't orc posting or Middle Earth posting or whatever it is, because I've been known to post Orc Lives Matter and things like that, but this is an actual serious article. And so, let's dive into this. Fantasy author Andy Duncan was inspired to write his story Senator Bilbo after noticing that the segregationist Senator Theodore Bilbo shares a name with J.R.R. Tolkien's Hobbit hero Bilbo Baggins. Senator Bilbo is this parody in which you have this racist demagogue stomping around in the world of the halflings in a sort of desperate holding pattern to keep at bay all the changes that is coming about as a result of what seems to have been the War of the Ring. Now, this is actually a very interesting time for this article to be written, because I'm almost done just reading the introduction to the Lord of the Rings, because I've been reading the Silmarillion, the Hobbit, and now I started the Lord of the Rings. And in the intro, when they introduce the hobbits, they actually is go into depth into how the hobbits came to the land, and they basically were under humans, and they participated in war and were told how to speak by humans, and humans got taught how to speak by the elves. And the land was basically abandoned in the Shire, and they took it over. And for 100, I think actually almost 1,000 years, uh, they lived in peace and forgot basically what war was like. So they just kept to themselves in the end, and uh, didn't participate in anything that was in the main world, other than before the war. And so and that's why you have the Shire Reckoning, which is told in the book and also in the movies. So let's continue. Duncan says in episode 336 of the Geek's Guide to the Galaxy podcast, the story in which appears in Duncan's new collection, An Agent of Utopia, was also inspired by Michael Moorcock. That's a weird name. Who has criticized Tolkien for depicting creatures such as orcs, trolls, and goblins as intrinsically evil. So what? I mean, they're supposed to be a manifestation of evil. Even in the Silmarillion, they're basically made from the Maya. No, actually not Maya. One of the gods Iluvatar created in Melkor, and Melkor is the one who is basically, he started perhaps good, but because of his jealousy and his anger, he turned to evil and basically first tried to take over Valinor and then destroy Middle Earth in the end. And in the end, after a lot of wars, he failed. And orcs and trolls and all of especially the spiders, they're a manifestation of his evil. He used Balrogs, he used dragons. I mean, in the lore of Middle Earth, they are evil, and they're supposed to be a manifestation of evil. So that's how Tolkien I represented evil in that there is actually a struggle, and he had this in real world where he lived during First and Second World War, but he basically wrote the Lord of the Rings because he during or before and during the Second World War, because his sons were part of that war, and he was worried and looked as the Nazis as the manifestation of evil. So he wrote that as part of the Lord of the Rings and his entire lore in the Middle Earth. But of course, you don't know that. It's hard to miss the repeated notion in Tolkien that some races are just worse than others, or that some people are just worse than others, Duncan says. And this seems to me, in the long term, if you embrace this too much, it has dire consequences for yourself and for society. Senator Bilbo first appeared in 2001, but its references to border walls and a Shire First policy make it seem more relevant than ever. Duncan says that's because the story deals with the themes that are unfortunately timeless. In many ways, President Trump is unique, but in many ways we have seen his like before. He says we've seen the forces that he has tapped into on the ascendancy before. Duncan believes that these reactionary waves come in constant cycles, so it's important for the response to be cyclical as well. As Tolkien well knew, the war is never quite over. It has a tendency to show up right there in your own home time when you're least expecting it. I mean, that's partially true. It's always kind of cyclical, but times have been getting better. I mean, that's even a fact in the Middle Earth lore. I mean, going from the Silmarillion, and then also to Middle Earth, the Great Wars, and it basically first Melkor is defeated, and then Sauron is defeated, and then you get better times. And we have never lived in a better time than now. So he's partially right, but I think it's accidental that he's right. Listen to the complete interview with Andy Duncan in episode 336 on Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. No, I won't. And check out some highlights of the discussion below. Andy Duncan and his story of an agent of Utopia. There's a vivid scene where the agent meets Thomas More, and then I'm pretty much done with More, except of course for the matter of More's head. Because Moore's head turned into character all on its own. There's a great deal of literal skullduggery going on in the story eventually, with the severed head of Thomas More, and all my friends of many years, which is more Catholic. Okay. I think, looking at this article, the end just seems to just sum up his stuff on science, on UFOs, racism. But to claim that Lord of the Rings, I mean, there's a reason that there is a prejudice against orcs. Orcs, goblins, trolls, dragons, balrogs, Mayas, which Sauron is. So you have these higher beings. You have the gods, which Melkor, Manwë, and so on. And then you have the ones below, but they are also sort of gods. There were supposed to be helpers for the gods, in people like Sauron. I believe also Saruman and Gandalf, and also the wife of King Thingol. It's a little bit more obscure, but she was also a Maya. Married to a elven king in the Silmarillion, and they were basically also very powerful. But the orcs, my point is, the orcs are the evil of these of the Mayas and the gods, especially from Melkor and Sauron, and they're also visualizing a struggle to be wary of evil. There are so many tales, especially in Silmarillion, actually saying, evil doesn't always come where you expect it to. Sometimes it comes from within. someone is you stand close to, and sometimes you can't avoid fate, which is also a theme with the Noldor, with the elves that wander from Valinor to Middle Earth because they seek vengeance on Melkor for stealing the Silmarillion, and which are basically noble rocks. And that's the best way to describe them. And this is the struggle between good and evil. The evil is always gonna be there, but what is it you have to sacrifice? And evil isn't always, it's supposed to also look as evil. It's supposed to be grotesque and ugly, and yeah, morbid and things like that, brutal, violent. So the whole point of orcs is actually to have a prejudice against evil, to be against evil, and to just say, oh, we have a prejudice against orcs is just so ridiculous, so ridiculous. The entire point of the Lord of the Rings and the entire universe that Tolkien created, it just went over your head, and you can't even philosophize or you use reasoning and philosophy to understand what he was actually trying to say with these stories, and then they were also personal to Tolkien. Anyways, this story is so freaking stupid. And let me go know what you think of these NPCs bitching and whining about orcs being evil, and and that we have a prejudice we shouldn't have. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye.